I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you guys for coming today. So we have a motion to approve the agenda.
So
Second. Motion. Got a second? Gary? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment? Okay. We have a motion to approve the consent items.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Ron, second by Jean. Discussion?
Just one question I have on the question of the coaches. Is that, what budget does that come out of, those coaches? Elementary, girls basketball, elementary boys basketball, elementary wrestling. Is that a community ed thing, or is that a?
I should know this.
Oh, well, I'm sorry, it was a busy day.
Elementary coaches.
It's not community yet.
What budgets?
Like Red Storm, is that what they're called or something? Or
That's not community ed?
it's gone through community. But the fees are not through community.
No. Okay.
Okay.
I know that Lisa Shuddy, as our AD, provides the oversight. All of those coaches have gone through a background check, as all of our volunteers have too. If you're going to work with kids, you have to go through a background check. And any of those coaches have the coaches handbook that the board approved from before.
Yeah, that wasn't, yeah,
You just want-
anybody, even in community ed, would have to go through a background
Right.
check if they're doing direct student contact, right, volunteers. But my question is just, what budget is this coming out of? That's all right, we can answer it later, it's not critical, but I would like to know. Thank you.
And there might be some confusion in the office about that too.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion items. January's organizational meeting day and time.
Okay, first we've got to plan when we want the organizational meeting. So are we going to keep the meeting on Thursday? And then at that meeting, I usually have a slate of meetings for the upcoming year. And I need to know if you want that slate to still stay on Thursdays, or if you want me to do alternate, because there have been years where I've done, these are possible Thursday dates, these are possible Tuesday dates. So I need to know what options you want for potential calendars for me to create for that.
For board meetings.
Right, for board meetings. And then also if they're going to be on Thursdays, January 17th is the third Thursday of the month of January. However, it is also during MSBA. And so that would be a meeting we would most likely you'd either decide to move it to another day that week, or do you want to move it to the 24th if it stays on Thursday? So I know I just asked you an entire long series of questions, so let's go to the first one for the organizational meeting, and we'll set this. We set the organizational meeting date and time at our next board meeting, but I need to know what to put in the board discussion item as far as the date. That first Thursday in January would be January 3rd.
How long do we have to do that first meeting? Could we do it the 10th instead? I mean, could we just do the 10th and the 24th in January, and then we wouldn't have conflict?
The only problem with that is you don't have you have no board in place in the event
first-
of an emergency or, right, they usually, MSBA recommends the first Monday in January. So even pushing it off to a Thursday is leaving you with a few days of,
Well, the first Monday wouldn't be till the 7th.
okay,
It just so happens.
okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But that's, the 7th is the latest. It could,
Well,
I was just curious, it's fine.
well, no, it's,
For the sake of uniformity, I would like to keep it on the 3rd.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
that's what I like, third.
that's what you, do we have consensus
Maybe.
on that for the board
fine.
discussion item?
Gene?
Yeah, I might not be here, but I might be here, I'm not sure.
I
Okay.
probably won't be.
Yeah.
And then as far as time, do you want to keep the board starting at 6? Do you want to push the start to 6:30? Do you want to, we've started it earlier, but I know it was tough for people to get here earlier than 6, so.
I mean, 6, I think's been working fine. I mean, anything. Mike?
well, the argument has been made in the past that pushing it up too early makes it a challenge for community members who would, who work till 5 and would like to attend. So later is better for the community, but
And
also
like,
adds.
it's worked out well that committee meeting's at 5 and then the regular meeting
Yeah.
at 6.
I mean, that's what I think it's been working out good for the last years.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I'm just restating other.
Why we don't do it earlier.
Past.
I agree with that. I would want to do it any earlier.
And if we push it later, then, there are events that start at 7 that we can sometimes make it to if the board meeting is short. That if we start at 7, we have just scheduled ourselves away from attending any of Thursday event.
6 o'clock on Thursday's been working real well, I think.
Did you maybe, Ron?
They always used to be at 7:30 back in
Right.
the day.
Yeah, back
They
in the
didn't
day,
start till 7:30.
they were,
That was-
they were much later. And then for a while, I think they were at 5:30.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was bad.
That
Then
was
we
not
pushed
good.
it. That was too
So
bad.
it really is board prerogative, whatever.
6 is good. Everybody can pretty much agree to that.
So I will have a board discussion item at the next board meeting for our organizational meeting to be January 3rd at 6 o'clock. And then at that meeting, do you want other options other than Thursdays?
Thursday, I think.
Not except for the
well.
conflicts, my opinion, that you can
Okay.
identify.
And if there are conflicts, did it work okay when we had the MEA days to still have a board meeting that Thursday of MEA?
I don't think anybody had a complaint problem this year, did we?
It was the first time we've done it,
Yeah,
so.
I think it worked fine. I mean, maybe you're the only one that maybe have gone someplace.
I'd love to go someplace, but I don't have any plans, so.
Same here.
And then for the MSBA, do you want that to move a week later? Do you want it to be, we have done Wednesdays before? What,
Well, then we're
Wednesday
not gonna be up
will
there on
Some
Wednesday.
people will be there already.
Yep.
oh, okay,
So I would say we either push it out to the next week, the 24th, and if we're concerned, maybe look at it, do it on a Monday. But for consistency, I just say we do Thursday, and it'll be a little tighter the one before.
January is a five Thursday month, so that would still give it, pushing it out to the 24th still gives us 2 weeks before the next.
I mean, that's that would be my recommendation is doing the 24th, but we have to have consent, so Mike,
Yeah.
good with that?
Yeah.
I'm passing you up, Gary. Yes.
We'll run into 4th of July is on Thursday,
Oh,
and I think Thanksgiving, the 22nd of November is on a Thursday.
So we'll just look at those dates for sure.
Those are the two that you have.
We only have one meeting.
One meeting.
One meeting in
One
July.
July,
So
so
that
that
will
would
take care of that one.
Is Thursday late this, or is Thanksgiving late this year, or is it
No, I think it's 22nd.
21st, 22nd?
It's just a
I don't think
Thursday.
I have 28th, 29th.
Maybe it's 28th, 29th, I don't know.
if it's the 28th, we're good.
Well, we'll know.
Yep,
When you
and
get
I'll,
the
As soon
calendar.
as I Google.
if,
It says November 28th. I Google. unless-
Pete, are you okay with those
Then it
dates
is
since
late.
you're here?
Yeah, so then we're
Are
okay.
you okay with those dates since you are here?
Thursday, I think, is a very good time for you
In November, won't bother them.
to have your meetings, and the more you stay on Thursday, the better.
okay.
Because the first is a Friday.
Okay, and now the next question on this one. Do you want committee meetings scheduled at this first organizational meeting? I know I've given the list before, and when it's been left up as an option, it's my fear is that when committee meetings are not scheduled, sometimes they don't happen. And I would rather make sure that we've got a schedule so we're sure that we're meeting the number of times in the charter. But once again, it's board prerogative. I will do what you feel is right.
Well, HFed, they schedule theirs for the whole year, and then if they don't have to have a meeting, they don't. And if they have to have a special meeting, they'll add that on.
For the
They
committee
schedule-
meetings?
They schedule the ones in there.
That's kind of how we've
Last
been
year,
doing it
remember?
this last year, I think.
Yeah.
Because the beginning of the year, we got a lot on the table, but I think it would be the best time to do that. Because the next meeting will probably be busier, is my thoughts, I don't know. Plan kind of do the schedule at the beginning of the year, because.
If I read right, it's your preference to have something on the calendar to be. And my concern with that would be, like the regular board meetings, if we do not hold them, then we need to take action to cancel them, because they are like posting the meeting date. So you can't just sort of arbitrarily hold one and not hold another one, because the public could look at the record and say there are committee meetings set for these days. Is that correct, or am I? Or how would we handle that? I guess that's what I'm asking.
If the committee meetings are approved as part of the calendar, then we would have to take action to say.
Take them
But
off.
You either
what
have
I'm
to
also
post them.
saying is we adopted charters.
Yeah, I
And
hear
the
what-
charters have said that they are going to be meeting quarterly. And that's also board approved.
Correct.
And so we need to make sure that we are adhering to what the board has ratified.
So I'm just trying to say, I mean, I think it's fine to do what you're asking, and it makes sense for the charters. I just think we need to be reminded that we would need to,
If we make a change.
if
to
we
it, have to know,
if we
make
need
sure
to
it's
cancel
all-
them, or there will not be a committee meeting held, that needs to be part of an agenda. That's all.
That's a good point.
We'll just make sure we have it on the agenda of the prior meeting.
I will.
And so if there is anything that's coming up, we'll confirm at that prior meeting, like we have a facility meeting, the next meeting, just confirm. And we can do, like you said, Michael, cancel if necessary. What else you got on that, Fran?
Nope, that was quite a litany of questions. I think that was enough.
I had one, and I guess maybe I thought it was on there, but I'm fine doing the committee meetings before, but if they're a
Oh.
committee that meets at like 3:30, it's too much to do 3:30, 5, and 6, because I'm here from like 3:30 till 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and
We did that.
I don't get paid enough for that.
We did that.
Yeah, it's no fun, and it happened 2 or 3 times this year, and if we could just make sure that those 3:30 meetings are on a different day. I mean, they could be on Thursdays,
For the
just a day
school,
we don't
for the
have.
school committees.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
district
those aren't
tech,
board
district
committees.
advisory, whatever other ones meet earlier in the day, but that just, in my opinion, gets to be. And I guess I wouldn't even mind if it was one of those and then a committee, but not the school board meeting.
Just so that us are drawn out.
Just no more than 2. Like, and tonight, you had 3 tonight, right? I didn't, but you did, so. And it wasn't so bad, because it was 4 instead of 3:30, but it still gets to be a long day.
Okay.
And it's, the committee meetings that I'm talking about scheduling are the standing board committees. And you're talking about district committees. And so we can just make sure that the district committees are not meeting on
The same day.
Thursdays when there's board meetings.
he's asking about, just to make sure that they're not coinciding.
The other thing which I appreciate is committees are not meeting immediately before the board meeting where action is expected.
Right.
So in terms of planning what's discussed, to sort of have them
Right.
staggered so that there's time to think about it I appreciate that, if that's possible.
Yes.
No, that's what
and
we agree.
that's why if we can plan them out and schedule for the year according to the way the calendar comes to play as far as finance, that one, I know right when we need to have finance meetings so that the committee can really look at numbers and then have a week or two before the board meeting.
Right.
And then if we could look at, and I know some school events we can't, but others, if they could know that, you know, like if they have an option of 2 or 3 weeks to have the elementary band concert, I don't know, or whatever, just try not to do it on a school board day, if at all possible. I know Christmas isn't, I think they maybe do Mondays, I don't know. There's, you know, and so it's no issue, but there's some things like
Just to
a
try to
festival,
If
right?
the high
Whatever.
school's doing Monday, we can't do a Monday, please.
Yeah,
I mean, we work around that schedule.
just do Thursdays, we don't have board meetings.
Just so the board has an opportunity to go to those type of events.
If at all possible.
If possible.
Yes.
Right, but if the music,
I understand.
the
if at all
musicians
possible.
have lives too.
I know.
They can't do it on the night that they have a contract.
Well, they could do Thursdays, and yeah, if it's,
Yeah, it's much more complex.
I understand. But if at all possible, if we have the schedule out there and it hasn't been scheduled, and I mean, we can make it if it's at 7 maybe, but if it's at 6:30, we just can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else anybody want to bring up on that? Okay. We don't have any.
We're trying to fit a lot of things, and I know it's a whole year, but we're trying to jam a lot of stuff into a year, and sometimes you're just not gonna have a day that doesn't have some conflicts.
So I'll throw this out here as a brainstorming, I don't mean to stir the pot, but since there is so much going on and so much to schedule, are there times of the year where board action materials is heavier? And those are the months where we should schedule 2 regular board meetings, and other months of the year should have 1 meeting a month. And that might be more confusing than just keeping it standard, but you've expressed concern about budgetary concerns with board meetings as well. So that was, July has just 1 meeting, maybe there would be other months that would just have 1 meeting. I'm just throwing it out there.
No.
I know before it was, even when there was 1 meeting a month, thank you, even when there was 1 meeting a month, there was also a work study session. And so everyone was paid to come to the work study session anyway, but there was no action taken.
Okay,
So, but no, it's, as a board, if you wanted, because July, we do 1 meeting. If you wanted,
But I think during the summer, there's certain times of the year, like Mike and Lee said, that we don't have a lot going on. But during the school year, it seems like we have things to discuss.
some of our regular board meetings have been pretty short agendas.
We've gone pretty quick.
And could have easily been put on a meeting 2 weeks later and been handled without. So we can think about it for the next year and just sort of maybe take inventory on, if things are
Good thing you
done.
gotta make sure though.
You're doing things in advance of action. That's what we're asking for, and a lot of times there was so much action coming all the time that it was like, let's have 2 meetings so we can get the information and then vote on it 2 weeks later or at the second board meeting. But now we're getting things in advance most of the time, and so
well, whenever I can,
I realize that. So anyway, we can look at it for the future.
And the other thing I've been trying to do, the first meeting of the month is usually something where it's more heavy discussion. And I know in February, our first meeting in February is going to be mainly a work session on our strategic plan. And so that will, I'm not not planning for any action to be taken at that February meeting, because it's going to be a meeting with discussion around our strategic plan, about creating benchmarks, about creating timelines, about creating responsible parties for it. And so what I'm trying to do is to make sure that the first meeting in each month is a meeting where it's more heavy discussion, where we really dig into the action that we'll take at the next board meeting. So I'm trying to do that. Sometimes
I realize that.
it's we've been doing, it's at facilities, what we realized is in the last 3 years we've just been doing a lot of stuff, so it was hard to not have action at every board meeting.
Well, and again, we can look at it, like you said, Michael, in the next year. If there's times where we see in advance that we may not have to have a board meeting, maybe at the meeting before that we can say we're not, or something, take action at that time. Just gotta
Even
watch it.
Most big school districts still only have one board meeting a month. School districts with a lot more student population than us. So that's also part of it.
I would not be opposed to that in the least.
Well, I'm sure it takes a lot of time and resources to pull materials together. All right, well, let's think
Good
about
idea.
it going forward.
That'd be fine with one.
Okay, we don't have any old business to go over. New business. Oath of office.
Okay, we need to file the acceptance of office and oath of office within 30 days of the election. So I've got these here, so if I could bring up the people to
Come on up, Bambi.
yeah. And I know we typically have all of you just kind of stand up and read it all together. Do you mind doing it that way?
No.
Okay.
Practice a bit.
Look at it, Ron.
Okay. Ronald, this is yours. And then you can be Tom.
Oh, we have to
So,
Okay, I feel awkward at the end of
okay.
this.
That's right.
So what you need to do is to read under the acceptance of office, to read that first line, and if you could read it in unison.
I hereby accept the office of school board member of Independent School District number 294 for a term beginning first Monday in January 2019 and expiring the first Monday in January 2023.
Okay, great. And then oath of office, if you
Too late
could
now. The
read
baby's
that
born.
in unison.
I swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state, and that I will discharge faithfully the duties of the office of school board member of Independent School District number 294 to the best of my
Judgment and ability.
Wow. We've been trying.
Choral reading is not our strong point. So now I will have you each, you need to
Sign.
sign, and Gwen's got the notary. So if you could date and sign.
Well, 2 spots, right?
No, you cannot notarize your own.
2 spots we gotta sign.
Right. Just make sure you don't sign where the notary is supposed to. And then once you've signed your life away for 4 years.
Did you do your oath at a board meeting or in the office? I did mine in the
Smaller groups.
Oh, you did it with Jean in the district office?
Just in the district office. It just had to be done and notarized.
Well,
I mean, I think this is nice, but I'm just trying to.
It's,
Well, I was by my, oh,
Haven't seen me sign $100.
no, hold on, or did you get, no, you elected, yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah.
you guys at the last meeting, 2014 went through this process.
there we go. Yeah, you have a great memory. Okay.
Yeah, your memories.
It's just,
I just think what it's gonna be like in 2023. Shouldn't be anything left.
Yeah, it's the three of us.
what's nice is that this is now part of the archive.
Yes.
So then we know that everybody has officially been sworn in. But as long as we are streaming and archiving things, it's a really good document.
Yeah, by 2023, you'll be lucky if we have. I'll pick you up, Ron. Where's my pickup truck? Tie down you in the back. Ram. Oh, weird. Jake.
I suppose that.
Yeah, that comes in.
There you go.
We've got time.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. And we've got policies.
Yeah. Okay, we done with that?
Yep.
Policies for first reading, 205, 206, 208.
Oh, first, what I should say is thank you to all who are willing to serve. It's a lot of times, and congratulations, a lot of times you don't get the thanks and recognition you deserve, but thank you. Okay, no, go ahead, sorry.
Policies for the first reading,
Okay.
205, 206, 208. Michaeline, Ron, what do you wanna?
The only change on 205 is that it
Oh,
classifies.
211, I'm sorry, I missed one. Thank you for pointing that out again.
It adds a line that it's okay to hold a meeting over Skype or, so that was an addition, that's the only addition to the open close meetings. The other things were changing the word, just changing some minor wording, I don't know why they get a
Citizen to the people.
people
Persons.
and persons, not
What's the
citizens,
difference?
but persons can address the board. Public participation in school board meetings, you don't have to be a citizen, you just need to be a person. I mean, that was the language change.
It's about citizens in the United States, and if
Yes.
you're illegal, can you
Yes.
speak to the board?
Correct.
And so that's why by changing it to person, we don't have to link to
But you'd be a
submit.
citizen of Canada then, or a citizen of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, just,
Yeah,
as long as
If-
you're- as long as you're a person, you're okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, so-
we just,
But they're moving to this.
Yeah, and in 208 it is, instead of it is the policy, it's just the policy. So, it's like really silly. Yeah, they just, instead of being passive, it is object of the, it is.
instead of a predicate nominative,
Yes.
it just turns it into a declarative statement.
Yes, that's all I can.
Pretty darn exciting.
Okay, so, Corinne, since we're not.
You count all those.
We're not there yet, so let's talk
We'll
about,
just keep going here on the
we'll just
announcements.
keep going to it, yeah, because it's
Yeah.
gonna take us a while to go through what we did at facilities.
Yeah, announcements, important events coming up. Corinne, you wanna go over some of these, the leadership conference, MREA?
Yep, right now, for the leadership conference, we've got hotel reservations, and, there are 4 of us that are going to be attending.
Mhm.
The actual conference, a couple are doing pre-sessions. Okay.
So we should talk sometime about who's going when, so we can figure out transportation. It doesn't have to be done now,
Well,
but
I'll be up there ready, so.
you'll be up there already.
Ron and I'll
so-
be up there ready.
Oh, you will?
Yeah, I have meetings, so you're gonna see family.
And
Okay.
I think I've got class Wednesday night, so I'm just gonna drive up Wednesday night right after class.
Okay. Yeah. That
You could
answers
ride
that.
back with us if you would like.
What am I gonna do with my car?
No, I'm just saying, if you had a way to get up there. If you
Thank
had
you.
another way of getting, I'm just saying, if you had a way to get up there, otherwise,
Take the
Michael.
train.
Yeah,
Take the
there's a
train out.
bus from Rochester.
There we go.
You take the train out with us,
There we go.
but if you get a ride out.
Thank you. No, that answers my question. I didn't know who was going when, but,
Yeah.
If you wanna hang out in Rochester while I'm in class, we can ride up together after
well,
that.
I'm scheduled for the early bird session, so I need to be there early.
Okay, so what else we got going on?
MRE Board of Directors, I've got a vote here that, as a school board, you have one vote together. There is one person running for the MREA Board of Directors. Jim Jensen is the only school board member from Triton Schools. What you could do is if it's okay that you designate a board member to cast your vote for you. Chair can do that? Okay, is that consensus? Chair can vote for you? Okay, but it's not really it's not a hotly contested seat. Let's put it that
Obviously.
way.
Okay, what else you got on that?
And Southeast Service Co-op, same thing. There is one ballot for each of you that I will be handing you to vote for Southeast Service Co-op Board of Directors.
I don't remember doing this one before. Is this done annually or every, whenever the terms are up, I guess?
Whenever the, yeah. Oh, I think this is, how long is their term?
I didn't see it.
What instruction?
I'm gonna,
Please vote for up to.
For
Well,
your
it
terms.
must be.
Yeah,
yeah, cause it wanna,
so I think you might have done it 4 years ago.
Okay. Just get these back to you when we're done with them, or?
Please.
Okay.
Okay, and that's, okay, so we're up to meeting and committee updates.
Are we doing the
District County.
truth and taxation or at 6:30 or not?
7.
7. Oh, 7.
Mhm.
The 7 is what the board approved, and I know on the Winona, things that went out at 6 for 6:30. Okay. So.
Should we do all of the, discussion regarding the financials during the truth and taxation?
Yes, we will. So,
Okay,
I-
so
yeah,
we already went through the events, meetings, and committee updates. Finance committee,
the finance committee updates will come during the truth
during
and
this, facility
taxation.
committee.
Yep, so,
Gary, you wanna go with that list of,
Okay,
do you have a copy of that, you know, or no, or that you put up for the facility?
yeah, we had a nice long agenda and we were even able to get through it all, so. We started with mock OSHA audit reports, and the general feeling there was they found a lot of little things, but nothing too serious or difficult to remedy, so it was a good exercise, and I don't think anything will be too difficult to take care of. Is that correct, Trent? Okay.
a lot of the stuff on a lot of the stuff that they found has already been fixed. Or we have plans to fix it.
Okay, the next thing is the custom alarm access control systems upgrade, and each of the 3 schools has a separate system and they will each need to be replaced. The estimate is about $15,000. And this will be coming up for approval at the next meeting.
Are they just outdated or they're not working or?
Well, some of them need new software, some need the fixes to the panels.
The software is where the big cost is.
How long ago did we get them? Is it,
It's
that's their
the-
life expectancy?
Yeah, it's the very first fob system that got installed, and it's shorting out right now.
I'm gonna do
And it's
resets on
not,
it, which is.
the software
really good
isn't
for the
supported
system, so
anymore.
They just wanna separate them and bring them back up to speed.
It's, right now, I'm crawling up and rebooting probably once every other week.
The biggest cost is the software part. Otherwise,
So
it's
these are
just-
3 separate systems, are they interchangeable?
They're all tied together, so it's a little under 3,000 for the panel at the elementary school, and then the new fob pads. And so almost 3,000, it's exactly the same cost at the preschool
At each
because it's the same system that has to be installed. At the high school, that's the one where it's 8,000 because that's the one that has all the software attached to it, because that's the one that's actually plugged into the servers. But then it's got the 2 panels attached to that one. And obviously that's the one that I reboot all the time, so I'm charading it.
So that's what the cost is.
It's about 15,000.
Total for all, the whole thing. Each one is about
She
3
said
grand.
8, 3, and 3.
Well, no, the one is like 8 because 3 of it is
Yeah.
part of the same as the other 2, and then the other 5 is the
5 is the
box.
software and
Software
the,
part of it,
yeah.
so. Go ahead, Gary.
Okay, the next 2 items are kind of together, science room configurations and asbestos removal. And the reason I say they're together is because the 2 science rooms are included in the asbestos removal. So the plan is to have the abatement done next June. Maybe you could put yours over there,
Yeah.
then I'll put mine over here and you can see.
This is kind of the rooms that will be
The rooms
done.
that are
You see
involved,
around.
17 of the rooms
That
will
will
have
be
the
abated,
floor
get
tile
rid of.
removed and the mastic ground off, because both the tile and the mastic came back positive for asbestos. So once that tile is removed and the mastic is ground, then what remains will be ready for either polishing or no wax tiles. That decision has not been made yet. But either way, the cost for the abatement is $125,000. The approximate cost for the flooring is $125,000 also. And then the science room, once that has been abated and the flooring taken care of, then it will be a matter of restoring the cabinets and doing plumbing, electrical, bringing the gas back in, and kind of rebuilding that whole room to the new specifications that are under discussion.
The cabinets that are there were built right on top of the tile. So to get the tile out, we have to rip out the cabinets. And to rip out the cabinets, it means that we have to, there's all the water pipes through the cabinets. So that's why they have to it all has to be redone.
And with the June target date for the abatement, then we're hoping to put these out for bids in January. And since we will want the science configuration stuff done right after the abatement, those bids will also be attempted to schedule for January, hopefully, to get them out there as soon as possible. Because we know that's when the contractors are making their plans for the coming year.
But for finance, the redoing the floors and that, redoing the floors hopefully can be done right away, so that can still be on fiscal year 19. But for rebuilding the cabinets in the science room, that's done after the floors are done, so that would be a fiscal 20 cost.
But they're all in the 10-year plan, or,
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
and they're all long-term facility maintenance, even the science.
Science, I have to check with, it's not Dale, Sarah Miller.
Yeah.
Yep. I have to check with Sarah to see if that, I don't,
It's replacing
it's replacing.
what we have about the asbestos.
We gotta verify it.
We just have to
It
verify
has to be
because that, and the reason I have to verify it, what we're replacing in the chemistry room is not exactly what's there right now. So I don't know if they would consider that new construction or replacement, because it would be, it doesn't make sense to do those forks into the room anymore, because it limits the flexibility. What makes more sense is to have the cabinets around the outside with the sinks and the gas, and then have movable tables, so the table can get moved and lifted up and become a new science lab so it can be set up for science labs and then moved out into the classroom for work, and it allows for that flexible space that we need.
So once they find out, we can find
Are
out.
the cabinets replaced as they were?
The cabinets would be replaced, so the cabinets would be the way they are in the biology room, so the cabinets would be, right now, the cabinets in the chemistry room are underneath those lab stations that are jutting out into the room. And so it would be different, and that's why we've gotta check with Sarah Miller to see if that can be long-term facility maintenance,
It
because
would be permanently attached.
the cabinets would be permanently attached, yeah.
Okay.
It'll make a
Qualify.
big difference in the
Yeah.
cost to us based on how we fund it, right?
Oh,
Right.
absolutely,
So
yes.
we're gonna do whatever we can to get it to be a long-term facility.
Oh, yep, you
Maintenance,
bet.
even if we maybe have to have it not be exactly how we want it.
Oh.
So maybe we need to
Well,
find
you
that out.
would-
I mean, if
Yeah.
it's gonna
No.
cost us $50,000 to have it like it was instead of our wish,
Yeah.
is it worth 50,000?
Well, that's where,
Well-
once they find out, we'll probably sit down and
Yep.
run the numbers to find out what's the best way to go. But
Mhm.
common sense tells you we're just redoing the rooms.
So does the
Because of the
conference room has to be abated?
That's, the little, if you're looking at the map, between 18 and 20,
Yeah.
That's
between
not gonna be
18
done.
and 20, that's actually the workroom off the district office, and I have
Okay.
asked Thad, who's from IEA, that will not be abated. If we wanted to abate that room, we would have to move the safe out of that room, and the safe has not been moved since, I think, 1970, when it got moved in there, and I don't even know how it got in there, because I think it's wider than the door. So the tile is fine there, it's absolutely fine, that's just gonna stay.
And that tile could be covered with carpet.
You bet, you bet, I will slap anything down, because I'm not moving the safe.
2 seats.
Okay,
Okay,
all right. The next thing we talked about is the garage update, and we learned that that has been going well. The kids are doing great work for occasional pizza.
that's true.
Right, yeah. So, some good news on that.
I think it looks wonderful, by the way. Every time I drive up, I think it looks great. Are we talking about the one right over
Yeah.
here?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Doors are coming in now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks, I never noticed it before. Now I noticed it, and it's so nice.
Yeah.
And new doors are coming in, and they're gonna have electric openers, and it's,
Yeah, it looks great.
yeah.
Okay, on the concrete installation, a bunch of that got done this fall by the preschool, the new sidewalk, and repairing the steps. What didn't get done at the elementary school is the new ramp and repairs to the sidewalk, or the steps going into the gymnasium. Anything that didn't get done this fall, of course, is scheduled for next spring.
If you're looking at what's on the screen, anything green is already scheduled. So the green work is scheduled to get done, blue is done, and red has not been scheduled yet. So it's for those of you who are not colorblind, the color coding should help. For those of you who are colorblind, I'm sorry.
Okay, the next thing is the high school piping replacement. And the challenge there is that we have to wait for the crawl space to dry up. And nobody really knows when that will happen, so we just have to wait.
It's solid mud. You'd need, you don't need chest waders anymore, but you'd still need hip waders.
Okay, I didn't know there was that much clearance down there. Okay.
I've been told I refuse. I don't go.
Railing for the preschool steps. This will be done next year. And the plan is to, instead of putting a single rail down the middle, which might limit traffic flows, the plan is to put a rail down both sides of the steps so that either way people will have that for assistance. On the list, we have asphalt and blacktop work listed for parking lots. This, of course, is put on hold and will be revisited next year. At the elementary school, they have listed fencing along Sheridan, and that will be left on the list for future discussion. See if that is needed at some point. And bark chips, of course, is health and safety, and that will be added in the spring. District signage. The only piece of the district signage that is left is the canopy over the district door. And we're waiting for equipment for that.
We're waiting for the sign to still get done. Craig is doing part of it, and then he's waiting for the other company to do like the iron work and the metal work for it.
Right. That doesn't involve any concrete work, so that hopefully can be done as soon as things are ready. In the elementary school, there are plans being made to replace the urinals in the bathrooms and replace some old cast iron pipes that are tending to leak every now and then, and that of course goes into the library underneath, which is not good. So that is being planned for next summer. On new construction, wish list really is an elementary cafeteria and a high school auditorium. The cafeteria has the highest priority because we still need to do something about that space, and it would really be nice. We've looked at drawings of where to put it and how to add it, and now it's just a matter of money, so that's still on the list. Any questions about anything on this list?
Did we get a quote again on the cafeteria?
2.2 now.
2.2 is what we're at.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that was brought up, and we'll get the chairs in the conference room desperately need to be replaced. So we're going to replace the chairs because they're
not supposed to be like that?
no.
Well, the first thing you have to do is check your arm
Make sure
rest to
that's
make sure
together.
they're not falling off.
Well, and the one I sat in today, the seat was broken out, so I sat down and all of a sudden sunk down to nothingness in the chair. So, yeah,
We did also talk about radon testing at the preschool and elementary.
that will happen in December. We will will test for radon in the high school building too, but we need to make sure that the crawl space is dry because radon comes up through the ground. And right now, with a wet crawl space,
Isn't that part of the testing that's done annually when they?
IEA,
Yeah.
it's not annual, and radon is not annual anymore. Radon hasn't been tested for a long time, so.
I thought we tested it when we redid
Was
the
maybe
floor there.
radium in the water.
Radium in the water we tested for last year.
Are you sure we didn't do that when we redid
Yeah,
the floor?
I
'Cause
feel like we
requested it.
asked about it. I feel
Yeah.
like we talked about it too.
When you did the wet, didn't we get it so that it wouldn't get wet again in there?
Oh, in the preschool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that radon's been tested in
Oh,
the
there,
preschool,
yeah.
the elementary school.
Oh, got it.
So, if I said preschool, I'm sorry, I misspoke.
I think you said preschool and elementary.
Okay, elementary school and high school need to be tested for radon.
Because the preschool passed, right?
Right, yes. Yep. It's not an airtight building.
Any questions on that? Thanks, Gary. So, student council meeting, I gave you guys all a copy of the minutes or the notes that we took. I should make sure we get a copy of this to Todd and forward that.
Oh, sure.
I mentioned it to him.
And if it's at the table, it needs to be part of the minutes and needs to get in your packet.
Dan's got a copy.
Okay.
So, I just asked some follow-up questions because it's easy for me to ask, and I think kids thought that it went well, and I think kids thought it was productive, but I just wanna make sure, like, we are productive with it. Like, what do we wanna do with this information? Do we wanna have further discussion about some of these items? Because I think we got some really good input from the kids, and I just don't want it to get lost.
Right, I called Todd on this, Mr. Lumberg, and I also talked to Corinne to make sure they're aware of what happened and we want to get them copies. And I agree with you, I think we need to follow up on some of these things. Some of the things that he said that were pointed out was the transcripts, for example, that would seem to be kind of a hot item right now. And they're looking at finding an alternative way.
We've already found it.
So there, there's things on this list that were brought up that are being taken care of. And as they get taken care of, we'll probably bring it up, maybe at the next meeting we have with the kids, or.
Yeah,
So they know that stuff's being done.
Yeah, so like with Alex Math, is that gonna go to the, like, just to keep the ball rolling on that and discussion going, does it go to the district tech committee? Like, who is in charge of?
Don't we have the four
It'd be
pillar
curriculum, I
groups?
think.
Like, wasn't there one for curriculum? You know, for curriculum.
The district-
You're going way back to planning.
District assessment, or district advisory committee would be in charge of Alex. Would not in charge, but would be the one discussing it, because that's curriculum.
And I think we're gonna have a thing, is Todd coming in with some, in January, I believe he's gonna be on the agenda to discuss this, where we're at, what's happening.
Okay.
The
So I
second
thought
meeting
we
in
would,
January.
we would tie these questions in at that time, maybe.
Okay. And then, I mean, cause there's some of them on here, like, there's some big level ones that we should know about, and then there's other ones where it's like a TV and the concession stand. Why not put it in there? I mean, you know, I'm just like, I know other schools have it, and I thought it's been cool, and I kind of forgot about it, but, you know, it's, I don't know that even needs to be a board thing.
And
You know,
when they talked to me, because I had spent so much time in the football concession stand, I said, well, it's in there. And then Lisa looked at me and said, no, inside. And I said, it is inside the concession stand. I sat, and she said, no, the inside concession stand. I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, it was funny because the kids said they would probably volunteer to work the concession if they could watch the games while they're working it. And we've had the discussion on finding people to work the concession stands, and that would kind of be a twofold, you know, so.
well, and I just don't wanna, if it's something simple like that, I mean, it doesn't need to come to the board,
No.
right? A TV is
Right.
cheap, right? We might even have one somewhere.
So, anyway, there you got the list, so hopefully that's
Alright,
something we.
perfect.
For that, opportunities for some lifestyle classes, I know Robin Flynn is doing some of the cooking. She's doing a culinary class that shows them how to cut the carrot or do the strawberry and everything else.
Robin
saying that MNBA has some of those classes too. I didn't know that. We didn't give the kids, I mean, we don't know, right?
Well, not cooking classes, but family consumer science classes,
Yeah.
yes, so they've got,
I just think it's communicating to the kids what's out there, you know, and
Yeah, and we
Doing a
don't
better job
know,
at letting
we don't
them
know all of that, so, but yeah, it was fun and very informative.
yeah, it was a good time.
And
Thanks
a
to
couple
Ron
kids
and Tom
talked-
for
yes.
cooking.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Good job, Ron.
some of the kids talked to me and said that they would like to see that happening, like,
Every day.
every quarter. Well, at first, the student talked to me, said, it's nice to have that once a month. I said, and I said, how about once a quarter? And she said, well, that'd be enough.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I just want them to, I don't wanna, it was fun, right? And I think they had fun, and I just don't want to listen to them and then not take any action on what they said, because then that's gonna get frustrating really quickly. So,
And I'll say, again, thanks, Tom did the introductions, Mimi did a great job of facilitating it, I really thought you did a nice job. Ron sort of set the stage about what was not going to be, you know, what we were not there to talk about. It was more to talk about, you know, the district, the bigger picture, and that all helped set the stage, I think, for a really positive meeting, so, which is,
I was impressed by how receptive they were and how well they talked and felt comfortable.
we've got good kids here.
Our student council kids are always great. I mean, in one of our neighboring districts, a school district same size as us, they just did a penny challenge. They challenged all the classes to see who could come up with more money. They came up with $1,800, and the student council members went and I don't know what store they went to, several stores, shopped. And they gave them about $1,800 worth of presents for Toys for Tots.
we've done those, Pelly.
Yeah.
I mean, Todd has done those
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, and that was the student council are people that really initiate those things and get them going.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on that?
Our student council is also helping with the potato thing on the game for the 18th.
No,
Uh,
peeling and cook, or not
peeling,
peeling.
yeah, 15th.
there's a potato feed.
Yeah,
On the
potato
18th.
feed on the 18th. Potato feed on the
Never
18th.
been to a potato feed. Yeah, December 18th.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, K-12 meeting, Ron,
We're almost seven.
Maybe we
Chair.
need to,
is it 7?
We got
to
time.
2
finish
minutes,
this
2
up.
minutes too.
Okay, why don't we'll leave that one for after this part of it. So do we have a motion to adjourn for truth and taxation meeting?
So move.
Second.
Okay, got a motion, and a second, discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And truth and taxation. We have the PowerPoint. Just taking notes. First, welcome to those who, it's nice to have an audience.
kind of maybe in, sign in.
Oh, and did you all, sign in? There's a sign-in sheet on the counter, so you don't need to do it right now, but before you leave, can we have record of who was here? Thank you. Oh, call to order.
Okay, can we call the truth and taxation meeting to order? At, what is it,
6:59.
6:59.
So this is the annual truth and taxation hearing for taxes payable in 2019. Okay, the agenda, we'll go through the background information. So I'll explain how taxes are computed, and then information on our budget. And then we're going to go through, the board will be having a discussion on the different options that they have. Historically, the proposed levy at this meeting, we discussed ways to bring that down even further. And then finally, the part you probably are most interested in is the public comment, and that will be at the end. The Constitution said that for states, funding public education is probably their most important task. It's education and infrastructure. That's what states are supposed to do. So the state sets the formula. School formula is set both on market value of properties and also on net tax capacity. So there are two different types of computations that go into setting the school revenue formula. And if you hear information about that, you hear about whether they want to put it on the
Freaking me out.
It's freaking me out, I don't know.
if legislatively they're going to put new money on the formula or on different types of areas within the budget. The argument the last couple of go-rounds for the budget bienniums in the legislature have been on whether or not they should fund preschool education and early childhood education. And so they were talking about setting that up separate from the actual formula. And so that's the formula generates the most money for the school. The school also sets the school tax policy. It sets the maximum we can tax, and then it authorizes the schools to do their work as far as either setting tax or going out for referendum to increase what's there. Okay, there are funds. There's the general fund, and as I said, that's 98% of the revenue. That's regular instruction, special education, transportation, and then custodial. We have the food service fund. So food service is its own account, and you'll see that in some of the funding that we've got up here and some of the spreadsheets of finance. The community service fund is also separate. Our preschool program is not part of the general fund. Our preschool program is a community service. Preschool is through community service, as are some other adult programs like the senior citizen, or let's call that the 55 and older driving class, because I now qualify, so we're not going to call it senior citizen anymore. And then the school age care, hurricane watch. Then we've got the construction fund. That's if we were going to be building, and then the debt service fund. That's with bonds. We've got 2 bonds for work that we've done at the school. One bond for the work that was just done at the elementary school with the new roof and the new HVAC system that was put in. That's on a bond, and then the HVAC system in the high school is on a bond that was done in 2009. The bond at the elementary was 2016, correct? 16. And so we've got repayment for that, and you'll see that in the spreadsheet. So here's the budget by fund, and this is what we talked about. We do have money set aside in our construction fund, so that's the fund balance. And there's at the
Excuse me, when you're talking about a number, can you maybe you can just laser point it, just so we know what number you're referring to? It would be helpful to me.
Okay. Construction, there we talked about the construction one. With debt service, this is all programmed in to pay for those bonds that we have outstanding. And Gwen, if there's anything you want to jump in on. Okay. Okay, board members, do you have any? Okay. So the highlights, this is a graph and it shows you this whole gray area. This is fun. It is the whole, that's the 98% general fund. Okay. And here, 90% of what funding we get here is from state aid. Currently, we have about 4% of our budget is paid with property taxes. The federal sources are about 2%. Federal sources, a lot of that comes in for special education, and if in the news you're hearing about special education cross subsidies and not the funding not covering it, this is what we're talking about, because they're providing about 2%, but it ends up being a much higher percent of our budget. And so state average is that we have about $872 per child underfunded. So that means that's the amount per student that the federal sources are not covering. And here's the expenditure here. The special education is 14% of our budget. And remember, special education is one of those things that usually is federally mandated. And the federal government covers 2%. And yet, this is 14% of our budget.
Corinne, if you go back a few years, is that number, I mean, what was that number 5 years ago? Do you have any idea? Is it growing every year? Or?
Oh, it's growing exponentially every year. Yes, yes, yeah, that's a good point. The cross subsidy before, we've always had some underfunding, but the costs are going up every year, and the federal amount that they're covering has been going down every year.
And the number of students in the program is increasing every year.
Yes. Yes, we online last year we were at about 350 students on IEPs. Property tax, your assessor determines the market value for each parcel. So in, I think, March, everybody got a notification from the county as far as what your assessed value was. If you had an issue with your assessed value, because I know a lot of people have assessed values that went up this year, you had until the beginning of June to go into your county office and contest that assessed value. Because right now the assessed value that's there is there for the year. You'll have to wait until next spring when the assessed value comes out again to contest that. So that's not your taxes, that's on your assessed value. The proposed tax sheet, that's your upper right hand corner. That shows you what your assessed value was in 2018 and what your assessed value will be for 2019. And if it really jumped, and a lot of people's estimated market value did jump this year, the time to have contested that has passed. I'm sorry. The legislature sets the tax capacity, and this is where it figures out what the tax capacity will be for farm, for residential, for agriculture, for business, for manufacturing. Then the auditor calculates the tax capacity. If you've got an entity in the town or district, let's say you've got a business, and back here they contested the amount of tax, that was being assessed on their market value, then at this point, after that, if their contesting was upheld by the county and the county said, yes, you are being overtaxed, what the county auditor has to do at this point is take that, take the amount that would have been generated from that industry, from that business, and spread it out over everyone else so that that same amount is there. Thank you. You're doing really well. Legislator sets formula. The Department of Ed then calculates the detailed levy limits. And the reason I'm giggling, this year, was it 42 pages? And when I started in this job now 5 years ago, it was 36. So at this rate, it's going to kill some trees just printing it off. And then the school board in September, the school board already adjusted the levy down. Before we had local optional revenue, we always in September would just levy to the max. Because of the local optional revenue, because of the long-term facility maintenance funding that we could generate, it would be too much of a burden on taxpayers. So we always reduce those before the September deadline, so that your proposed taxes don't have a 64% tax increase, because nobody wants to see that, and we wouldn't do that. And then the auditor divides that final levy, and then you get your proposed tax statement, and that's why you're here. Okay. Now, when we talked about funding, this is from the end of the 2017 session, and what I would like you to see is that, and this is all adjusted for inflation, so it's all adjusted for 2017 dollar amounts. Back here in 2003, the state provided almost $10,000, and the taxes raised only about $776. So now, if you watch what happened, by 2011, the state was reducing that amount, and then the communities, your taxpayers, were having to fill the difference. And then this is when we got a new governor whose goal was to really start funding education again. We have inflation every year, and so the fact that from 2003 to 2019 we have gone up less than $600, but if you look at what's happened with the taxes, they've gone up by $1,300. And it's one of those where the state, and this is my little push, your legislators need to know that in funding education, it is the state's job to fund education. And they should fund it by putting the cost of living increase right into their legislative action, so it's not on your backs. Okay. And so here, state funding has been kept up with inflation, and they did give us the authority to levy up to $300 per pupil unit instead of going to the voter, and I think there are 2 schools in the state that don't do that, but everybody's done that. And then the local optional, most schools also have the full $424 per pupil unit in local optional revenue, and you'll see that we reduced ours because in 2013 the the state changed the way taxes were calculated, and instead of taxing on the resident pupil units, they taxed on average daily membership. And so we went from just getting taxed on the students that live in the Houston district to all of the students who open enroll to us. And about 75% of our student population open enrolls in. And so that really put a burden on, we didn't want the burden to be on taxpayers. So that's why we always look at what the taxpayers would be taxed if they were only taxed on our resident pupil units, and we adjust it down to that again so that you're not impacted by all the students that open enroll in. So this is when it says payable 19, that's payable if we didn't do any changes. So you'll see that the local optional revenue, this is what we could have taken in 2018. This is what we ended up actually taking. So it's ended up about 60%. This is what we could, and then we've already ratcheted that down a bit. That's a difference. I'm sorry, that's a difference. This is what.
That number was actually 800.
Oh, that's right. Okay. This is already reduced because it could have been 800 and. Okay. It was slightly under 900,000. Then the next one that really long-term facility maintenance, we've already reduced this down. We could have taken a lot more, but we're just taking what we actually need to pay for as far as the levy. One thing to note with long-term facility maintenance, the levy is actually about 12% of our full long-term facility maintenance. The state kicks in the other 88%. So we take just what we need for our projects. So it's right now what we ratcheted down works out to about a 31% tax increase, and that's what you're seeing. That's what you're seeing on your statements right now, but that's what we're going to be discussing, reducing down more. And I know most tax statements actually have higher than a 31%, but that's because of the changes in the market value assessed on your property, or changes in the net tax capacity, and adjusting for other changes in market values. So I know it's a lot of places went up 34, I think mine went up 38%. Okay, so here's, if the board members could all look at the screen as far as the different changes. Payable 18. We last year reduced the property tax rate. So this is the property tax rate that's used to calculate the amount of taxes. We reduced that down the year before this in payable 17 was $5.95. Yep, so it was 0.595 before, and we reduced it down 0.029. And so if we got the option of keeping that tax rate exactly the same, and then it doesn't change. However, if we're looking at that total levy, it actually reduces the levy because and the net tax capacity in the district changed, And so this would basically underfund our general ed by $50,000. So then we looked at, if we tried to keep the general ed revenue the same, we'd have to put that $50,000 back in again. And that would have, that would bring us to a 0.592, which would still be under where we were in payable 17. So it would be bringing us not quite back to those levels, and that would be a 4.6% increase, and on a $100,000 home, it would be a yearly increase of $26. Then the finance committee also said, how about getting that 26 to an even 30 and getting us closer to where we were in payable 17. This 0.596 gets us very close to that 0.595 where we were in 17. And but this is a 5.3, and it really doesn't, I don't have it written down, but instead of 50,000, how much does that? Put your glasses on.
It would bring it up another, well, 8,000.
8,000, so that would just bring us to 58,000. And then this, the finance committee said, hold on a second, this flat gen ed revenue doesn't account for cost of living. What would it be to do a cost of living increase? This cost of living increase is what it would take minus what the state has already said that they were going to increase. So this would bring us to the cost of living that, and the change, once again, cost of living is that 2%, but when you're looking at the market value, it actually is it's almost a 15% increase, and then that brings the property tax rate to 0.65. And then that would be $86 on the effect of the home. At the finance committee, Gwen and I both said that we could find ways to tighten our belt and live with the flat gen ed revenue. We're making the budget work with $50,000 less. Might not be possible. We know we're going to have cost of living, so we're going to have to tighten our belt anyway. But this is what we think is doable. And it's still not raising taxes back to what they were in payable 17. So finance committee members, did I miss anything there? Did I?
I think we're discussing maybe to bring it up to the $30 on 100,000, just so we made sure we covered any additional costs or changes that we may occur that we don't know about at this time. And it still is going to be a little bit more than it was in 2017 before we lowered it, but it was just giving us that little bit of extra cushion to make sure that we have, what I hate to see, and I think we talked about at the committee meeting, is we don't, it's nice that we lower taxes, but at the same time, if you try not move them up a little bit for your cost of living, next year, that number, then instead of $30, maybe $90 to make what we're doing right now today. And we don't want to do that, because then we're going to have not enough room in this building to put people. So, when I talked about it, my suggestion was to go to the $30 on a $100,000 home. It's a little bit over what we did in 2017, but it's not where the $86. It's kind of like a happy medium. It's going to give us some funds to maintain the school, give us a little bit extra money for any incidentals that come up. Any business you want to run flat, that'd be great, but what if? we run into a situation and we don't have the funds. That would be my concerns. Mimi, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, you're on the committee with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that we're in a situation where, you know, it's like keeping taxes the same means less money for us. It's not good. And then, I mean, we have to raise them 4.6 just to stay even, and we already know that we're paying the teachers more, right? They get pay increases, steps and lanes, all that stuff, right? So we already know our expenses are going up, so it's not a, yeah, it's a, I wish if we held taxes the same that we would get the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's unfortunate that that goes down.
Right.
So
I mean, last year we made it out because we got to lower. We were lucky we got the opportunity to lower them because the numbers ran differently. This year, because the state and the federal government's not giving us what they used to do, everything changes every year. And you had pointed out earlier that instead of the 5.3% on the proposed tax was 31%. It's a huge jump down from 31% to 5.3%. Again, it's just, as a member of the board and on the finance committee, I think I don't want to see the 86 by no means at all. You know, because I like to leave here alive. But, you know, I think the 5.3 is, you know, I don't know.
Well, the other factor was that this is payable going forward, so this money isn't realized for how long? 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's where I think Tom is referring to, you know, we don't know 2 years. If this was just a 1-year projection, then you're a little bit, you know, then you know what you're more likely to know what your unexpecteds are gonna be, but 2 years from now, that's a long time.
Right.
Without a crystal ball. So that was part of our discussion as well, is when the money is levied, taxed and collected, and when we actually realize it as part of the budget.
And any comments from those who are not on
Josh?
finance?
Gary? Jake? Maybe you have any more?
no, just with the 4.6% increase, that would be the same amount of money. So what that means is that we need to look at, you know,
We'd have to be making cuts.
we'd have to make some cuts.
There would be, I mean, realistically, in 2 years.
Maybe there was an
if we
expense
don't
for a
get that
van or
extra-
something like that we don't need, so we have to look at something, we just have to be, when we're doing the budget, very cautious, because we're not including an increase for salaries, for inflation, for any of that. And I guess at either one of those numbers would be 4.6, 5.3, it's $8,000. You know, I mean, is that what we're talking? I mean, we're talking about a really small amount. So, but my gut is somewhere in there is where we'll probably end up.
So, my recommendation, I don't know if you're on board on that one, would be the 5.3. Just because we're looking at 2 years down the road, and I sure don't want to be, you know, next time we sit here next year again, looking at even more just because we made a mistake. And not, I mean, I know we can tighten the budget.
With either of these, we will have to,
Well, we'll have to make some changes at the same time. I just feel like, you know, we're limiting ourselves.
And in 2017, it was 0.595, and so
Right.
we're looking at 0.592 or 0.596.
We're basically going back to what we were getting in 2017, is what it amounts to.
And the 2017 amount is the same, we kept that flat in 2016 and 2015 too.
Yeah, this is the first time in a while that we've had to make a bump up decision like this. So.
I think the auditor said in the review that what we got in reserve is low compared to others. If we put it down, that's going to put us in a lower rating in terms of looking at our district.
Okay.
Okay. Public comment, so if you want to go back to the back slide. So then, because this is probably what you want to have up in front of you if you want to comment or ask questions.
So the proposed rate was 31%,
The
On
proposed, yes,
Proposed
on
was
average.
31% on
and
average,
so it should drop down just for the school portion
right?
yes.
to some, if we were to vote as we discussed, somewhere in 4.6
6
to
or
5.
5.3, correct.
If your property value stayed the same.
Right. Now, if your property changed, because we've had that happen where people come in and they build a brand new home and they want to know why last year's home is less than this year's new home, you know, that factored in. But at this time, if anybody wants to ask questions or comment on anything, concerns,
I'm just curious, Courtney, you said that special ed costs are rising exponentially every year. What's driving that?
Mandates about what we have to do, the federal mandates from ideas, the reappropriation of the Individual with Disabilities in Education Act, mandates what we provide, and they make mandates and they do not provide the funds for them. You're fortunate that our cross subsidy, as far as the amount that is underfunded for us, isn't the highest in the state. I think Winona has one of the highest underfunded cross subsidies. They're around $1,300 per student that's underfunded. It's a case where Minnesota Rural Education Association, the Minnesota School Board Association, the Minnesota Association of School Administrators have all banded together to try to lobby legislators to fund special education, because it's really creating havoc in all of our budgets. The special ed is part of the reason that the costs are going up so high. But there are kids. We're going to do what's right for them.
right? That answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the question. Understood. Anybody else have any?
You mentioned the online students special ed rate going up, but that doesn't hit the local taxpayer at all.
Nope, that does not hit the
So it's
local,
just
nope.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yep, that does not hit, that doesn't, thank you, yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't hit the local taxpayers at all. The special ed students that are online, the special ed students that are on site,
Yes.
that does hit the local
I've seen that, the
taxpayers.
numbers back. Are those groups that are lobbying gaining any traction with the legislation? I mean, to get them
They're
to,
creating a lot of noise. I don't know if anyone's getting any traction right now. Going into this next session, we've got a new governor, and we've got a split legislative session, legislature. So I don't have a crystal ball.
In a rural community, it's, you know, we have people that are helping us, supporting us, you know, in the legislation to try to push stuff through. But again, we don't have the power, I guess you want to call it, is, you know, like a Minneapolis type thing. But I think the people we have working for us are doing a really good job, you know, to help us change that.
It's one of the reasons that we are members of the Minnesota Rural Education Association.
They do a lot for us.
Sam Walton, and Fred Nolan really are very strong advocates for rural education. And they're doing everything they can. They're also fighting and lobbying to get the legislature to actually put in that cost of living, because this fluctuation and the uncertainty for taxpayers is not fair. It is just totally, it's not fair to do to a school district, for the kids to know, okay, what's gonna get cut from the program this next year. It's not fair to taxpayers to wonder if they're going to be able to afford their taxes. It's not a good way to run the state.
Is there any other further questions, comments from the public?
I guess the only thing I really have to say is, so you guys are gonna look at the 5.3, is that?
That's what we're gonna decide on, right?
Because in my proposal that I got, I'm at about 11 roughly, and I have no property value changes from last year to this year at all.
So what you
you're only
got,
at 11%?
I'm at 11% increase.
yeah,
And right
I'm at
now,
an 18.9% increase, but I'm at 11% if you figure out your dollars per 100,000. When you're looking at your change in property tax rate, when you're going across in your percentages, I'm at 11%. So I'm way above where you guys are proposing.
your proposed right now should reflect a 31%. And what we're talking about is taking
My
that.
taxes went up $210
Yeah.
just for the school.
yeah, that's why we're saying that's the third, that's what they
31%.
call it, is just a proposed right now. Until this meeting, we discuss it here, and we're looking at lowering that down
So
to the 5.3.
The 5.3.
Correct, right.
It won't
So
be that.
That will change. I mean, it's over the years, we've always had people come in and, because they see the taxes, I get mine, and you look at it and you're like, wow. But that's why it's proposed, and you're like,
It's a lot
that's
easier to
crazy.
bite into 5.3 than the 11.
Correct. Yeah, then we calculate, it's gonna be recalculated out and it'll drop down.
And I mean, quite frankly, I talked to a lot of people in the county, and there's a lot of grumbling. A lot of people aren't very happy.
Well, to be honest with you,
If that was explained to them a little bit better before we got our notice.
Mhm.
The other thing that I was a little bit upset about is the notice says that this taxation meeting is for tomorrow,
Yeah.
not tonight.
Yeah, that's,
We're gonna have it
we
tomorrow.
jumped on that right away.
Yep.
In fact, we will have people here tomorrow just to
Yep.
make sure that whoever does show up is covered, because it
Yep.
was an error on somebody else's
Right,
part, not on ours.
so we'll do that again, so.
So we apologize.
I got a question here. If you say you're clear up at 30%, you're actually only gonna be down here at 5.3. Why don't you set that so when that comes out, it's a little more reasonable to where you're actually gonna be? I think we'd have a lot less headaches with people complaining if, you're saying 30 and now you're turning around saying, no, it's only gonna be 5.3. Well, when I got my taxes and it's $200 and some increase on school tax alone,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not happy. If you go talking about this 3, now you'd have been talking 40, I wouldn't be too upset. But I think you should be a little more, the county's a little more accurate with what they're gonna do. Townships are a little more accurate. I'm assuming the cities is. Can't the school be a little more,
We would love to, except when we have to certify the proposed in September, the state Department of Ed is changing their numbers on a daily basis. And so we're still not quite sure where things are going to fall into place until probably middle of October or early November. And so if we take it down and then they're changing the numbers, we could end up really, because once we propose, we can't go above that.
We're handcuffed.
Yeah.
And so if they could get us the numbers in September and those numbers are the numbers and they weren't gonna fluctuate, we definitely could do that. But when they keep changing the numbers until the end of October.
You should be working with your groups to get them to have a set date to get that information.
Oh, we
to you.
are. We are,
Well,
but right now, we're screaming into the wind.
Part of it is because of that 42 pages of line items, and that's the numbers that are changing all the time, right? And some things are like the long-term facility maintenance, 12% of that is local and 88% of it is state. So you want to tweak the numbers in those line items where you are getting the least impact on the local and the most from the state. So that's where we have to tweak all that to come down with that bottom line between.
And we did lower it. It could have been 70%, something like that.
Yeah, originally the proposed could have been like 64%.
That doesn't make you feel any
But
better.
I mean, I know that doesn't make you better, we'd have more here.
We knew what we were up for here.
We lowered it down to 31 because, like I said, with all those pages of changes, we tried to capitalize on what we're gonna get from the feds or the state funding wise, so we don't have to pull in as much for local taxes. And we don't know that until they've done their magic wand stuff and, you know, calculate it out and say, okay, here's what you got.
And
But you're right, we would love to be able to go and in September and say, yeah, we're gonna have a 5.3 increase in school taxes.
And there have been some Septembers where we have had a special board meeting and tried to push that special board meeting as close to September 30th, because that's when we have to submit the proposed, as close to September 30th as possible, because those numbers are just changing wildly every day. So.
And as you notice, even this evening, sir, you know, a week ago, we had a meeting on finance and we were discussing these numbers because we didn't know for sure where we'd end up. So that's volatile. It's can be pretty crazy. But we apologize for the inconvenience of, you know, you guys spending your time.
Well, at least I understand what you're doing.
No, and we appreciate you coming in to get an understanding, because we do have people that think we're just spending money crazily, you know.
It looks that way when you get the taxes.
No, none of us here that pay taxes want that to happen, so.
I was actually asked by multiple people if the Houston school was putting on some sort of addition or another gym or something, because they looked at their taxes and they're like, oh my God.
That would be a special.
In fact, when we did this
Well,
most
I was
recent.
asked why there wasn't a vote for a new levy.
Yeah, no. I mean, when we did this newest edition, that's what Quinn was talking about, the 88%. I mean, we were one of the few schools in the state that got that money from the state to do what we got done.
At that rate.
At that rate.
Everybody gets the long-term facility
Yeah.
maintenance, but there are some schools that, it's based on the age of your buildings and, the square footage. And so because our buildings are, older than average, our elementary school was built in 1939. Part of this building was 1957, another part was 1970. And then our preschool is 1859. That really kind of adds to the age of the building, so you get more money, you get a higher percent the older your buildings are. But we love our buildings, and we're maintaining them, and they will last hopefully another 150 years.
Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, so when I do my tax, I write the check, I write it in dollars, so I function better in dollars than percent. So I happen to have one of those houses that somehow the county thinks it's worth 200 grand. So my proposed statement, it said that my school taxes were going up $430. So if you guys do the 5.3, 30 times 2, my taxes will go up $60. Is that what we're saying?
That's correct.
Yes.
Well, Gwen,
Say the numbers again.
let Gwen calculate that out,
I'm gonna
because
try to.
I would love to say that, but there is some weird numbering going on. I'm not a math whiz the way they work at it, so.
That kind of goes back to that 40-page document that we have that calculates the taxes, and so there's the first 2 pages are just things that the state and the county have figured out to do the calculations, and so if any one of those numbers changes, it's going to affect your taxes. The class of your property is going to affect it, the property value is going to affect it, and all of those numbers are going to affect it. So even though we say 5.3%, every single person's taxes are going to be different as far as the percentage increase. You're never going to find somebody that gets a 5.3% increase on those school taxes, but what you have to look at is compared to the proposed, your taxes are going to go down significantly from the proposed. Another thing, I don't know if you guys keep your proposed tax statements from year to year, but if you go back and look at the schools, you'll see that the proposed were always higher than what we actually ended up levying. You know, so it's been, what, 10, 15 years that we've been having to deal with this, where we propose it at one level and then we levy it at a different level. So yeah, you're never going to get to that 5.3% no matter what you do, but
And some will be, some might be under it,
significantly
some might be under, some would be over. And if you have rural property, one part, your market value is based on your home and 1 acre. but then your other parts are actually based on the entire holding. So if you've got 40 acres, one part of your taxes is based on your house in 1 acre, and another part of the tax is based on all 40. And that's when
I'd
we
like to be
talked
able
to
to
you
tell
about
you it'll
the,
be $60, Steve, but I can't. I'd be lying to you.
And that's fine, but
But it will be lower.
it could be plus or minus 5.3, so it's proposed at 38, but the plus or minus won't turn out to be 36 because of all these unknown factors.
No.
it'll be around 60.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thanks you guys for coming in. Thanks for having the questions. Appreciate it. So do you want to adjourn from our truth and taxation? Go to open meeting?
Second.
Remember to sign in.
Okay, so let's do a motion to reconvene to a regular meeting.
Move to reconvene.
Second. All in favor? Yeah. Okay, so we're back to meetings and committee updates. K-12 meeting online for online schools.
Want me to take it?
Yeah, sure.
This is the meeting we just had, right? There wasn't a committee meeting supposed to be recording it? Yeah, so we met with, K-12 to talk about, just kind of start talking about the contract, and renewing it early if we're gonna be a destination career academy. And, I guess, I don't know, I mean, the meeting went really well. It doesn't sound like there would really be many changes at all. We talked about the free seats and maybe upping the amount of the free seats and having that be part of the contract. Was there any other change?
No, really.
I mean, there really isn't much change, so
Contract
2 more years.
But
Well, they're not, the deal was, it's up in 2 years. We have to decide by this June whether or not we're gonna do, there's like a buffer window in there that we need to start talking. So the idea was, when this came up on this new school edition, was this destination, they didn't wanna invest that time and money that they would be investing if we were not gonna continue on with them. So they wanted to sit down with us and have a discussion. Are you guys wanting to still be part of K-12? And if so, are you going to look at signing another contract? So what would happen is, if we decided on this, I'm sorry, Mimi, you can go, sorry.
I don't know what you're gonna say next. What's next?
If we were gonna decide on this, they would, we could decide beforehand, and then the new contract would start this year in July 1 for another 10 years.
So we would sign it like January or February, and basically we'd be committing to a new contract starting in July, so that they could prepare working on the Destination Career Academy and know that we are gonna do that, and then it would be a 10-year contract. We could change the length if we wanted as well.
So what's the main advantage to the career academy?
I think, in my opinion, I think it's gonna help bring in a lot more kids. I think K-12 thinks that too. It gives the kids, I think it's interesting. Did you hear were you here when we talked about the topics? I think you were. It was business and health, and business. And I think it gives the kids something that they can get certified in. Yeah, and so they can take all their other classes, but they can have this, to do. I think that's appealing to kids.
And it ties in with our goals, with career and college readiness.
Yeah,
So
and
how many career academies will there be in Minnesota?
Well, that's the other thing we asked for. One of the things that we talked about was we would be the only one in the state from K through K-12
For how long?
for 10 years.
10 years.
there's a lot of
Being
investment.
contract.
It's a lot
Yeah.
of investment on their part, so why would they want to do that with other people? They just want to build one. And so the only thing that we need to be able to do is say that we won't restrict growth.
Meaning that we would be willing to get bigger if we had to support that. And we didn't feel like that would be a bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the school board would have an issue, with that.
We don't have to be able to bigger scoop for the students.
So, I think it was a great meeting. I guess it didn't even sound like really that many changes to the contract, so we'll wait and see. But yeah, great. And I think as Corinne said, you know, what we talked about with the strategic plan, we'll revisit in February, but she was saying that this aligns with like every one of the topics we talked about. So
at the next board meeting, the Pats are coming back again just to talk about the marketing push for Destination Career Academy and what things we'll have if somebody wants to register at MNVA. And because of the Destination Career Academy, there's a separate link just for that, so we can earmark that kid as knowing that they're a DCA kid.
And we also talked about, we'd have the free seats, but Houston kids could also, you know, go to Houston, and then if they wanted to do the Career Academy too, they could. So they said, I want to do the nursing or whatever, they could do that, and that would be part of our free seats.
Well, so far it sounds good.
Josh, you have any questions?
No.
Michael?
They're just rolling around. They're not formulated yet.
No, you know, and that's kind of what this is all about, just to give you a heads up where we're talking. It's not a done deal by any means. It's a discussion. You better off discussing it early, because they're gonna come back, he said, next week with some red line stuff that we talked about and some changes to the contract that we can, you know, things that we wanna see in there to make sure that it goes according to what we discussed.
And then it can go to our
And it
lawyer.
can go to the lawyer to be checked, and, I mean, you guys, and in fact, we mentioned to make sure that someone, Michaeline, gets a copy to review for us, because you are specific on things.
No, that's Jean's job.
We can get both of you
We
a
give
copy.
Jane a
early,
copy.
yeah.
Well, so on this growth thing, there's something about don't restrict growth. So, and I totally support that, except we've had some challenges with getting people in, and then the cost of onboarding and the cost of student support. So is there something in the program budget that we could negotiate to give some latitude, some local control to that budget? That's what would like to see in
They've
there.
They've already allowed us to start staffing low at the beginning of the year, and that's something that really has helped to alleviate some of those pain points.
But that was just,
And we
seemed
did
like we could
mention-
never get at the program budget. It was something we, you know, we just were stuck because that was the way it was laid out.
No, the one guy that was one of the Pats, I mean, they were pretty receptive. I mean, we mentioned we're not opposed to growth, but we don't want to grow just to grow.
Oh,
You
We
know,
want to
Todd-
go with
Todd
the
Scott
right,
and
the
Todd
right
today.
support,
Oh.
the right supports.
Yeah,
Is that who said it?
yes.
The Todd and Scott's and the Pats, you
Todd
gotta get them
Scott.
started.
We should be wearing name tags. Anyway, two guys over here today.
Michaeline, Corinne said that the only way we could really, the only way we could restrict growth is to close open enrollment, right? So that would be a big deal. So, and that's not something we're looking at doing, so.
Is there any other questions?
No, just wanting to have some
So we'll have a chance to
input
kind
into
of
the
peruse
way
this
the monies are
contract
spent.
You bet.
shortly, or?
Yes, I'm hoping that, Todd was, going to get it to, K-12 legal, and hopefully you could, there's not that many changes, and it's just, adding in the Destination Career Academy to the contract. And taking the free seat document that was just kind of off on its own and not part of the contract, and putting it in as another exhibit, so that's actually part of the contract, and it should have been
And
that
opening
way.
it up to maybe more seats.
Yeah,
But
that's a good
most-
But they
And is
weren't
there
as
any,
far as
like, within a 10-year contract, a reopener in there at all, or we would just go for another 10-year?
There is that caveat in there, and when you get a chance, you mean reopen the discussion?
Well, I mean,
Or
renegotiate.
you know, is there a stop point, you know, where at year 5, this is a place where you can step out and relook at it? And just, I don't know how you would do that, or if you would do that, but.
I know
right
there's-
now, the language is that if either side wants to terminate the agreement, they have to do that at least 2 years before. So at least 2 years before the sunset. But then it's any time before that July 1st of that calendar year.
Well, it's in there, so.
Yeah, we
it's
can
in
look at
there,
it.
there's some verbiage in there where if it's not profitable,
But that's
if we're becoming too.
because
or
we're
the
talking
state-
about changing, we really needed to do this 2 years because we were reaching the 2-year point, because this July 1 is 2 years before the contract sunsets.
It was a good discussion.
And
But
you
if
know,
you
it
guys
was,
do have questions.
it was a big deal when we did the contract, cause we converted from whatever school to managed school, and it was like really stressful, and so it would be really nice to get it done early and not have a ton of, you know, be able to use what we have, which seems to be working, things seem to be going well, so, and to get it done early, I think is nice, it's less stress for us, and, you know, get the new contract in place.
Gene, did you have some questions?
On the online note.
We'll give you a copy of it.
He's on the online.
You're on the committee. Plus, I mean, I want to make sure you get a copy because you're on there and Josh is on there. So you guys should, once we get the one right print from him.
And I think he said he was gonna maybe give us a online committee, a more detailed marketing presentation or something.
Right, in January.
Yep.
January 24th.
So, and I think it's all, I think the Destination Career Academy is good, and I think they're seeing a lot of success in other states, so I'm sure they have good materials and lots of stuff. It's all good, I think.
And other people have blazed the trail and have made the mistakes, so we can learn from that and go in a very positive direction, because I know Scott, who is our Deputy Regional Vice President, he got the Destination Career Academy started at Arva, Arkansas Virtual Academy as head of school before he left, and he said within 2 years that was really solid, so he felt good about leaving, and it's just the school is it's really brought in a lot of very motivated students.
Okay. So, do we have anything else as far as
Yes.
board superintendent feedback?
Yes, one thing, we got a letter from Minnesota School Board Association to Mr. Ronald Evanson. When someone sticks with something for 20 years or more, he or she deserves recognition, and that's exactly what MSBA has in mind. You will be presented with a certificate for your 20 years of service as a school board member at the 2019 MSBA Leadership Conference during the recognition luncheon on Thursday, January 17th. Okay.
Free lunch for everybody?
No, and in fact, Mr. Evanson has decided that he would rather not attend the luncheon. He would rather have a special luncheon with just those of us from Houston attending the conference, or maybe when we come back we can have a little celebration on the 24th of January at our board meeting to recognize, and he'll get the certificate. But I just, yeah, it's,
I was gonna say 20 doesn't sound like enough.
yeah.
Good. No, you and Michael, you've been on it a long time.
We've been on it, what, 14, 15, 16? I think you and I are about neck and neck.
Oh, you had some time in.
We had some time before.
I know, but it's
Collectively,
collectively.
it's all good though.
So I just wanted to announce that and
Okay, Gene, did
publicly give you kudos.
Thank you,
Couple
Ron.
things.
Oh, Gene's got some stuff if anybody wants to listen.
We had a Hiawatha Valley Ed meeting, and our bookkeeper accountant is leaving us, so we're in search of a new one. And that he is going to stay until March, Chris Melvick.
Yeah.
And that he was good, so he keeps the books going real well. They're still working with Cross Anderson, they getting around to doing everything, so Moses certainly everybody are becoming as to what they're gonna do for buildings or not building and that. They're working with Winona School District, trying to bring them into there. They've been meeting back and forth. For a while, they didn't think they were making any progress. At the last meeting, Winona wants to give them their area learning center. So I don't know. I know some of those students in here.
There's a lot of history there. So that's a big
So if they get them in or not, maybe that'd give us a foot in, so we don't know on that early, what the cost is to that. They're looking at getting a van or hiring Ready out of Crescent to transport them. Ready wanted like $44,000 a year. They figured they'd get a van for $18,000 and that per year. But then they would have to get to Paris to maybe drive the van. So they're going to transportation problem like we are kind of with that. So, but that's what's been going on with the Hiawatha Valley Ed District.
Cool. Thanks for
Thank you,
that.
Jane.
Good job. Okay, anything else? Anyone else?
Audit report.
Audit report?
Are we gonna have the audit report
Next.
next meeting?
Meeting.
Oh,
It's planned.
That,
Cool.
Should be good.
yep.
And did you
sometimes
put out
we get
the
it really early and sometimes
newsletter
it gets
yet?
pushed late like this.
Okay. We have one student here in our district, and we talk about the STEM program or the STEAM program, and we have one student in middle school art class that in the Peace Poster Contest was our top winner here, and that student went on to the regional, and that student's got third place in the regional
Cool.
for that one as well.
Congrats.
Very nice. Thanks
So,
for doing that
I
too.
can after Sunday the program is, and I can release it on that.
Okay.
What position he got, I said he got third place, I should have said. He placed.
You placed. They're good.
That's
Yeah.
good,
He
that's good.
gets $100 for that, plus he gets $50 from our local Lions, so he gets $150.
Nice. How many years have you been doing that? Has the Lions been doing that?
This is our 31st year that the Peace Poster's been in.
From this district? Not from this district though.
No, not this district. We haven't had Lion Cubs here down here.
Yeah,
So.
but ever since.
Yeah.
That would also, we could add a public thank you to Mrs. Hargrove for volunteering after school to police those
Students.
peace.
Which
Yeah.
Hargrove?
Marge.
Oh, Marge.
Marge.
Okay.
Hargrove.
She's our local Lions Club when I work with her. And there's 30 schools that are entered in this contest, so I mean, he's got 30 out of 30.
That's good.
So,
Not that you're saying what you great.
That sounds a little contradictory to be policing people that are doing peace.
I'll make it, I'll get him.
Oh, I had one of them.
She's a peace officer.
And it was
Chaos.
They had fun, they enjoyed themselves.
Okay, if there's nothing else, do you have a motion to adjourn?
Well,
And a motion?
Second.
Second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you again.
And we'll be back here tomorrow at 6:30, but the board does not have to come. But if the board would like to, you are welcome.
Oh, yeah, that's.
What time are you